right now, above your head, a war is being fought. Not with pilots or soldiers, not yet, but with lasers, missiles, and satellites designed to blind your military, cripple your economy, and upend global security in ways most people don't even realize. And America is losing. On August 12, 2026, just days ago, General Stephen Whiting, the commander of U.S. Space Force Command, the most powerful space military organization on Earth, made a public admission that should have dominated every news cycle, but barely made a ripple in mainstream media. He said this: China and Russia have built a weapons arsenal so advanced, so effective, that America's satellites, the backbone of military communications, GPS, intelligence, weapons guidance, and global commerce, are now vulnerable in ways we've never experienced before. Not in theory, not in simulations. Now, operationally, today. The weapons aren't science fiction anymore. They're deployed, they're tested, and they're changing the fundamental nature of conflict and geopolitical power forever. This is the story that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody needs to understand. Because within your lifetime, this space competition will reshape the global order, decide who controls military dominance, and determine which nations lead the next century. Welcome to MindSnap. I'm your guide through the stories that shape geopolitics. And this is the most important one you need to understand right now. To understand where we are, we need to understand how we got here. And that means going back further than most people realize. For 70 years, 7 full decades, American superiority in space was so complete, so absolute, that it was taken for granted. Not just by military planners, but by average Americans who assumed that space was fundamentally an American domain. Think about 1957. Russia launched Sputnik, the first satellite, and America was shocked that Russia had beaten us. That moment triggered the space race, and for the next 15 years, every move in space was driven by superpower competition. But here's the crucial part. By the 1970s, America had decisively won that race. We went to the moon. We built a sophisticated satellite infrastructure. We developed military satellites that could see into Soviet territory with unprecedented clarity. And we did something Russia never did. We made space the backbone of our entire military and economic infrastructure. GPS satellites revolutionized warfare. Precision-guided munitions became possible only because satellites could guide them. Surveillance satellites gave America the ability to see military movements anywhere on Earth in real time. Communications satellites allowed the military to coordinate operations globally. Reconnaissance satellites collected intelligence that shaped foreign policy decisions. But more than that, space became the foundation of modern civilization itself. GPS keeps trucks on highways. Satellites maintain global communications. Every phone call, every text message, everything transmitted across the world relies on satellites. Financial markets depend on satellite-based timing systems. Milliseconds of synchronization between stock exchanges worldwide is enabled by satellites. Power grids use satellites for control and monitoring. Air traffic control depends on GPS and satellite communications. Weather forecasting, climate monitoring, disaster response, all of it runs through space. America built this infrastructure during an era when no one else could compete. And we built it assuming that America would always maintain superiority. That assumption shaped everything about how we organized our military, our economy, our infrastructure. But that assumption was always fragile, and it's been broken. In the last decade, something fundamental has shifted. China and Russia haven't just caught up to America in space. They've studied American space dominance, analyzed its vulnerabilities, and deliberately built a weapons arsenal designed specifically to neutralize it. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't happenstance. This was deliberate strategic planning. China understood that America's entire military advantage rests on space. If you can't see the world through satellites, you can't guide precision missiles. If you can't communicate through satellites, your military command structure fragmentizes. If you can't maintain GPS, your supply chains collapse. If you can't control satellites, you can't project power. So China asked a simple question. What if we built weapons designed to make space a liability instead of an asset? What if we made American satellites liabilities that America would fear to use? Russia asked a different question. What if we made space so dangerous that nobody could use it safely? What if we created a weapon so devastating that it would deter anyone from fighting us in space? Both nations have been pursuing this strategy for decades. And as of August 2026, both nations have succeeded. Crisis Revelation, 1530-28. General Stephen Whiting, the commander of US Space Force Command, is not an alarmist. He's not a politician trying to secure budget funding through scare tactics. He's a military professional who has spent his entire career in space operations. When he speaks, military officials listen. On August 12, 2026, he made a public statement that should have shocked Americans. He said this: "We operate in a domain in which our opponents have built a suite of counterspace capabilities to hold our satellites at risk in all orbital regimes." Let me decode what that actually means, because the language is technical, but the implications are staggering. All orbital regimes. Space isn't just one layer. Most people think of space as this singular domain above Earth. But space is actually organized into distinct altitudes, each serving different purposes. There's low Earth orbit, LEO, where satellites circle at altitudes between 300 and 2,000 kilometers. This is where most reconnaissance satellites operate. This is where Starlink and other communications constellations live. This is where space stations orbit. LEO is the busiest region of space and the most militarily valuable. There's medium Earth orbit, MEO, at altitudes around 20,000 kilometers. This is where GPS satellites orbit, along with other navigation and timing satellites. These satellites move slowly across the sky from any fixed ground location, taking hours to cross the horizon. MEO is more stable than LEO, but also more distant. And there's geostationary orbit, GEO, at 36,000 kilometers altitude. At this altitude, a satellite's orbital speed matches Earth's rotation, so it stays fixed over the same spot on the horizon 24/7. Most telecommunications satellites live in GEO. Communications with the military use GEO satellites because they never move. You just point an antenna at them, and they're always there. For decades, America assumed that space was essentially divided into spheres of influence. LEO was militarily contested but vulnerable. MEO was harder to reach, so supposedly safer. GEO was so distant that it seemed almost sanctuary, too hard to attack. But that assumption was wrong. China and Russia have built weapons that can threaten satellites at every single one of these altitudes. That's not a regional threat. That's not targeting one type of satellite. That's comprehensive orbital control. They can put American satellites at risk everywhere, at any altitude. Now, what are these weapons? General Whiting described them as a suite of counterspace capabilities. That's military language for a lot of different kinds of weapons. But it's important to understand exactly what's in this suite, because each weapon type works differently and creates different problems. Kinetic anti-satellite missiles. Start with the most dramatic, kinetic anti-satellite missiles. These are basically just bullets for satellites. They're projectiles that are launched from Earth and collide with satellites at incredibly high speeds. When a kinetic projectile hits a satellite, the satellite explodes. But here's the dangerous part. When a satellite explodes in orbit, it doesn't just disappear. It creates debris. hundreds of pieces of metal and composite materials traveling at orbital speeds. That debris then hits other satellites, causing them to explode and create more debris. And that debris hits more satellites, creating a cascade effect. This is called Kessler syndrome, named after the scientist who described it. In Kessler syndrome, you reach a point where the debris field becomes so dense that it becomes self-perpetuating. Debris creates more debris, exponentially, until an entire orbital zone becomes unusable. This is permanent. You can't clean it up. You can't negotiate with debris. Once you create it, it stays there for decades. China and Russia both have proven anti-satellite missile systems. China tested one in 2007, intentionally destroying one of its own weather satellites. The test created thousands of pieces of debris that remain in orbit today. Russia has also tested anti-satellite missiles and has declared that it intends to develop more advanced versions. The threat here isn't just one satellite gets destroyed. The threat is that a coordinated attack on a few satellites in the same orbit could create a debris cascade that makes that entire orbital zone uninhabitable for decades. That's not just losing a few satellites. That's losing an entire orbital layer. Electronic warfare systems. But missiles aren't the only tool in the arsenal. China and Russia have also developed sophisticated electronic warfare systems. These are essentially jamming systems that can disrupt satellite communications from the ground. A single electronic warfare jammer can transmit a signal strong enough to overwhelm satellite signals across an entire geographic region. If a jammer is activated in the Western Pacific, for example, it could disrupt every satellite communication passing over that region. Military units that depend on satellite communications suddenly lose that capability. GPS signals get jammed, secure military communications get disrupted. The advantage of electronic warfare is that it doesn't destroy satellites. It just makes them useless. You can turn a jammer on and off. You can adjust its power and frequency. You can target specific satellite networks while avoiding others. This makes electronic warfare a more politically acceptable option than kinetic weapons. You're not creating debris. You're not breaking international law. You're just disrupting communications. But the military effect is the same. American forces lose critical capability. Cyber weapons. Then there are cyber weapons. Most satellites are autonomous. They orbit without constant human control, but they do depend on ground stations on Earth. These ground stations command satellites, receive their data, and relay that information to military operators. If you can hack a ground station, you can potentially take control of satellites or shut them down. Chinese hackers have previously penetrated American defense contractors that build satellites and military networks. Russian hackers have demonstrated sophisticated cyber capabilities against NATO infrastructure. A cyber attack on satellite ground stations could disable satellites without destroying them, and the attribution is murky. You can't always immediately tell that a satellite has been hacked versus failed for natural reasons. Directed energy weapons. Russia and China have also invested in directed energy weapons, primarily lasers and high-powered microwave systems. These weapons transmit energy beams that can damage or destroy sensitive satellite components. A laser can burn out the optical sensors on a reconnaissance satellite, blinding it. A high-power microwave can fry the electronics inside a satellite. The advantage is that these weapons work at the speed of light. There's essentially no reaction time. The disadvantage is that they require clear line of sight and good weather to work effectively. But imagine a scenario where China has deployed a high-power laser system on the west side of the Pacific. If an American reconnaissance satellite passes overhead, the laser fires and instantly damages the satellite's sensors. The satellite is still in orbit, still intact, but effectively useless because it can't see anymore. Co-orbital satellites. Finally, there's the most exotic weapon, co-orbital satellites. These are spacecraft that can maneuver in orbit to approach other satellites, rendezvous with them, and potentially destroy them. China tested this capability in 2008 when it conducted an on-orbit servicing demonstration. The test showed that China could maneuver a spacecraft to approach, inspect, and potentially alter another spacecraft in orbit. This capability is concerning because it combines precision engineering with plausible deniability. If a co-orbital Chinese satellite approaches an American satellite, what is it doing? Inspecting it? Preparing to destroy it? Trying to hack its systems? You can't tell from the outside, which creates escalation risks. An American commander might order the destruction of an approaching co-orbital satellite out of self-defense, potentially triggering a conflict. The nuclear option. And then there's the weapon that keeps military planners awake at night: Russia's nuclear anti-satellite weapon. According to multiple intelligence assessments and US military leadership, Russia is developing a space-based nuclear weapon designed to detonate in low Earth orbit. If detonated, this weapon would create an electromagnetic pulse that would fry the electronics of every satellite in low Earth orbit simultaneously. We're not talking about one satellite. We're not talking about destroying specific targets. We're talking about a single nuclear explosion that could make LEO essentially unusable for decades. Thousands of satellites would become non-functional. Global GPS would disappear. Global communications through LEO satellites would disappear. Weather forecasting would disappear. Military command and control would disappear. This is mutual assured destruction, but in space. It's a weapon designed as the ultimate deterrent. If you attack us in space, we'll use this weapon to destroy all satellites, including yours, creating chaos that neither side can control. Now, understanding these individual weapons is important, but understanding them separately misses the bigger picture. The real threat isn't any single weapon. The real threat is that China and Russia have built a comprehensive, integrated system designed to degrade American space capabilities. Let me lay out what China has actually built operationally. As of 2026, China operates over 1,060 satellites. That's not a communications network for internet service, though some of them do that. That's a military constellation. Many of these satellites are dedicated reconnaissance systems designed to collect intelligence on military movements, naval operations, and strategic targets. China's constellation includes Yaogan satellites, dedicated reconnaissance satellites with high-resolution imaging capabilities, Beidou navigation satellites, China's own GPS system, independent of American control, Xi'an experimental satellites, designed to test new technologies including potential weapons, Jilin-1 commercial satellites that double as surveillance systems, plus dozens of other specialized satellites. This constellation is designed to give China complete surveillance coverage of the planet. China can see American military movements. China can see American naval operations. China can see when American aircraft launch. China has the ability to collect intelligence about American military capabilities in real time. But more importantly, China has surrounded this constellation with weapons designed to protect it while degrading American capabilities. And Russia, unable to match China's production capacity, has focused instead on building the most destructive possible weapons. Russia can't build 1,000 satellites, but Russia can build nuclear weapons and missiles designed to make space unusable. The result is a strategic nightmare for American military planners. America depends on space for dominance. China and Russia have built weapons designed specifically to deny American access to space. And America is only beginning to develop counter capabilities. Here's where the story gets even more urgent. The Trump administration's response to this threat has been to dramatically increase Space Force funding. The 2026 budget for Space Force operations approaches $40 billion, a record high. This money is going toward building resilient satellite networks that can continue functioning even if some satellites are destroyed. Instead of depending on a few large satellites, the US is moving toward deploying satellite swarms. Thousands of small satellites that can replace each other if some are destroyed. Developing rapid launch capabilities so that destroyed satellites can be quickly replaced. Instead of waiting months to launch a replacement satellite, the goal is to launch replacement satellites within hours or days. Building space-based weapons systems designed to defend against Chinese and Russian attacks. The US is developing its own counter-space weapons, systems designed to disable or destroy enemy satellites. Integrating commercial satellite networks, particularly SpaceX's Starlink, into military operations. Instead of depending exclusively on military satellites, the US military is learning to use commercial satellite networks as backup or primary communication systems. Hardening communication systems so that military command structures can survive disruption of satellite communications. The goal is to create redundant, distributed command systems that don't depend on any single satellite link. This is a massive undertaking. The $40 billion budget is just the starting point. Full implementation could cost hundreds of billions over the next decade. But here's the uncomfortable truth that military planners are discussing behind closed doors. Even with $40 billion and rapid innovation, America might not be able to maintain absolute superiority in space. The era of American dominance might actually be ending. We're entering an era of contested space, where both sides have significant capabilities, neither side can guarantee safety, and the risk of escalation is dangerously high. Now there's one more element to this story that deserves deep attention, because it changes everything about how space warfare might actually happen. Elon Musk's Starlink satellite constellation wasn't originally built as a military asset. It was supposed to provide global broadband internet. The first Starlink satellites launched in 2019. By 2026, SpaceX has deployed over 5,000 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. On the surface, this looks like a commercial space project. Starlink provides internet service to people in remote areas. But the moment these satellites entered orbit, military strategists around the world realized something. Starlink has fundamentally changed the calculus of space warfare. Here's why. Starlink is a distributed network. It's not a few large satellites in predictable orbits. It's thousands of small satellites in a mesh network, constantly maneuvering and adjusting. If you destroy some Starlink satellites, the network automatically reroutes around the destroyed satellites. The constellation is resilient by design. During the Ukraine conflict, this became operationally relevant. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainian military needed secure communications. Elon Musk provided Starlink terminals to Ukrainian forces, and Starlink became the communications backbone of Ukrainian military operations. Think about what that means. A commercial satellite network became a military asset, not by design, but by necessity. Ukrainian troops used Starlink to coordinate defenses, direct artillery, communicate with command. All the things an army needs to do to function. This was a watershed moment. It showed that commercial satellites could serve military purposes. It showed that commercial networks could function in a war zone. And it showed that distributed satellite networks were more resilient than traditional military satellites. The US military immediately understood the implications. The Department of Defense started integrating Starlink into military planning. US forces began training on Starlink terminals. Military commands began developing contingency plans to use Starlink if military satellites were disabled. This creates a new problem for China and Russia. They can't just target military satellites anymore. Commercial constellations like Starlink are now military assets, at least in the context of conflict. So what's China's response? Chinese military doctrine now explicitly includes plans to degrade or destroy Starlink as part of space warfare strategy. Chinese military researchers have published papers analyzing Starlink's orbital patterns, discussing how to jam Starlink communications and planning anti-satellite operations specifically designed to neutralize constellations like Starlink. This escalates the stakes enormously. In a hypothetical conflict between China and the United States, one of China's space warfare objectives would likely be to destroy or disable Starlink. But here's where it gets really complicated. Starlink isn't just military. It's also used for commercial communications, financial networks, civilian internet, and infrastructure control. Many critical infrastructure systems rely on Starlink as a backup link. So if China attacks Starlink as part of military operations, the collateral damage would be massive. Global communications would be disrupted. Financial systems would be affected. Civilian infrastructure would suffer. Supply chains would be disrupted. This creates a kind of escalation trap. China might feel justified attacking Starlink as a military target. But the civilian damage would be catastrophic, and America would likely escalate in response. This is the kind of escalation dynamic that keeps military planners awake at night. How do you fight a space war without destroying commercial infrastructure? How do you distinguish between military and civilian satellites? What happens when the line between military and civilian collapses? The answer is, we don't know. This territory is uncharted, and that uncertainty is destabilizing. Let me be direct about what happens if space warfare actually occurs. Most people don't realize how completely dependent our civilization is on satellites. Let me walk through the consequences scenario by scenario. Military consequences. Start with the military. If a significant portion of American satellites are destroyed or disabled, American military capabilities degrade dramatically. Precision-guided missiles depend on GPS. If GPS satellites are destroyed, precision guidance stops working. Tomahawk cruise missiles, smart bombs, guided artillery, all of these depend on satellite guidance. Lose the satellites, and America loses precision strike capability. Military commanders would have to revert to unguided weapons, less effective, less precise, more collateral damage. Aircraft carrier strike groups depend on satellite reconnaissance. Carriers need to know where enemy submarines are, where enemy ships are, where enemy aircraft are launching from. That information comes from satellites. Lose satellites, and carrier strike groups become vulnerable, essentially operating blind. Drone operations depend on satellite communications. The remote pilots controlling drones are often thousands of miles away. They control drones through satellite links. Disable satellite communications, and drone operations stop. Military command and control depends on satellites. The Pentagon communicates with military units worldwide through satellite links. Disrupt satellites, and the chain of command fragments. In short, disable American satellites, and American military capability degrades from overwhelming superiority to merely competitive. That changes the balance of power in any regional conflict. Economic consequences, but the military consequences, while significant, might be smaller than the economic consequences. Global financial markets operate on nanosecond timescales. Stock exchanges are synchronized through satellite-provided timing signals. The integrity of financial transactions depends on that timing. Disrupt satellite timing signals, and financial systems start to fail. You'd see trading halts, market collapses, and potentially a global financial crisis. Global supply chains depend on GPS. Trucks, ships, and aircraft all depend on GPS for routing and tracking. Lose GPS, and supply chains become chaotic. Goods don't get delivered on time. Inventory systems fail. Economic efficiency collapses. Global communications depend on satellites. Most long-distance communications, international phone calls, intercontinental data transfers, video conferences, pass through satellites at some point. Disrupting satellites disrupts communications, which cascades through the global economy. Power grids use satellites for control and monitoring. Modern power grids are computer-controlled, using satellite communications for real-time monitoring and adjustment. Disrupting satellites disrupts power grid control, potentially leading to cascading blackouts. The estimate from military planners and economic analysts is that a major disruption to satellite infrastructure could cause $2 to the 5 trillion in economic damage. That's comparable to the 2008 financial crisis, but potentially worse because the damage would be global and immediate, with no time for economic systems to adapt. Civilian consequences. For civilians, the consequences would be even more dramatic. Your GPS-enabled smartphone stops working. Navigation apps don't function. Delivery services can't find addresses. Emergency responders can't locate people calling 911. Your credit cards might stop working because the payment systems rely on accurate timing from satellites. Your weather forecast disappears because weather satellites go offline. Air traffic control becomes severely degraded, potentially grounding flights or causing aviation accidents. Hospital systems that use satellite-based timing for medical devices would start to fail. Some surgeries require split-second timing from satellite signals. Essentially, modern civilization depends on satellites in ways most people don't realize. Take away satellites, and you take away most of the technology that makes modern life possible. So here's where we are as of August 2026. China has built comprehensive space warfare capabilities designed to degrade American space assets. Russia has built devastating weapons designed to make space unusable for everyone. America has recognized the threat and is spending record amounts to develop counter-capabilities. But the fundamental reality is this: American hegemony in space is ending. We're moving into an era of contested space, where no single nation has decisive advantage, where escalation risks are high, and where the margin for error is zero. This isn't alarmism. This is what military leadership is saying in internal briefings. The question now isn't whether space will be contested. It's how quickly America can innovate, how effectively we can deter conflict, and what happens if deterrence fails. For most of your lifetime, space was America's domain. You were born into a world where American space dominance was absolute. That world is ending. Your future will be lived in a world where space is contested territory, where multiple nations have significant capabilities, and where the risk of conflict is real. Understanding this matters, not because it's entertaining, but because it shapes your future. The geopolitical competition unfolding in space will determine which nation leads in the next 20 years. It will determine military balance. It will determine economic power. It will determine global influence. This is the story of our time. And you now understand it better than 99% of people on Earth. This is MindSnap. We cover the stories that shape geopolitics. This space race story will define your lifetime. The competition, the weapons, the risks. It's all happening now, above your head. Thanks for watching. If you want deep dives into geopolitics, subscribe. These are the stories everyone's talking about.